Chapter 1. An Innocent Kill. He's young and likely innocent, and I wish it made a difference. If he doesn't move in the next 3 minutes, this kid has to die. Most people don't understand my work. They think murder is the hard part. In the beginning, maybe, when you're 14 years old, hiding under a bed, breath loud, knuckles white on the steel, eyes hot with tomorrow's tears, footsteps approaching. But even then the hard part wasn't the destined dead. The hard part was the living. They never follow the plan. The living always crowd forward, treading on the heels of those fated to die, as if when they meet death, they'll nod a greeting and pass on by. The first time, it was a castle maid, coming to check on her worthless lover I'd been sent to kill. He was leaving her. Instead, she joined him in eternity. My first murder of an innocent. Now it's this kid. What's a kid doing out playing ball at this hour? Why has he got to be here? From my perch, I feel as if he's 1,000 paces away, tiny across the chasm of experience, and I, alone atop a cliff, though he's merely on the ground and I on a rooftop across the alley. He has a few rocks set out to show the width of the goal. As I watch, he spins around an imaginary defender, bounces the ball once, then kicks it against the compound's wall. Ka-tunk, ka-tunk, ka-chunk. Over and over. He puts his hands up and makes a sound like a crowd roaring its approval. Young kid, 12, maybe. All stupidity and big dreams. Maybe he thinks he's found his one way out of these slums. Remind you of anyone? I ignore the Kakari speaking in my head. If it weren't so helpful when it wants to be, I'd throw the damn thing as far away from me as I could. Twilight is a burning fuse, and soon the sun will explode merciless on the horizon, revealing all I've done or left undone. But still I wait, hoping I'll find some third way. Ka-tunk, ka-tunk, ka-chunk. He's just a kid. But he's not giving up his practicing. Knowing what it may mean, am I really going to do this? Yes. Yes, I am. She's worth it. They deserve justice. All right, that's it. Morning's coming. Time's up for both of us. I move, dropping silently from the roof into the deeper shadows of the alley. Ka-tunk, ka-tunk, ka... Streaking in from nowhere, I snagged the ball out of the air, left-handed no less. Maybe I missed my calling. I could have been a street ball great. The kid's jaw drops and his eyes go ridiculously wide at the sight of me. It's a bit satisfying in that I feel proud that I can scare children sort of way. Is this one of those dark pleasures of power Count Drake tried to warn me about? I haven't dressed to impress. Tonight, this morning, technically, I'm in my mottled black and greys with a hood and face mask, an unstrung bow tucked away and a black short sword in a tension-release back scabbard. There's something interesting about the ball. I look at it. It's leather over a goat belly air bladder stitched into nearly a perfect sphere. Kids in this neighbourhood usually make do with a wad of rags and twine. I'm going to ask you a favour, kid, I growl. My business isn't with you, so I'm asking you to leave, quietly. Please. You understand? There's a man out tonight who'd kill a child. I pause long enough for him to wonder whether I mean myself or the dirtbag noble who lives in the compound beyond this wall. Lives, but maybe I'll remedy that. He give you this? I ask, spinning the ball on one finger, then another. Lord Rephaim? The kid can't even nod yes. Frozen. But I know I'm right. Such gifts are a cheap way for a man to buy loyalty in a slum like this. "You're the Night Angel," the kid chokes out. "You're Kylar Stern." The ball's spinning slows, stops, but it stays poised on my fingertip. They know I'm back in the city. Lord Rephaim knows I'm coming. That explains the magical traps twisting in the air above his walls, keeping me from simply climbing over them. And if this kid knows about me... "You work for him," I said, taking the ball in hand. "That's why you're out here at this hour. You're a lookout." "Ah, that makes things more